Hi, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz. Welcome to episode number 5 of the InnovABuzz podcast, designed to help smart businesses with an interest in innovation and the Internet of Things become even more innovative. In this episode, our guest is Glen Finkel from Pureti, an American manufacturer of light-activated water-based surface treatments. And Glen is going to tell us about their innovative products that use sunlight to help clean exterior surfaces and sanitize interior surfaces. Now we're going to learn about what this technology does, how Pureti have met the challenges to promote a technology that Glen himself describes as too good to be true, as well as the things that Glen and his team do to be innovative. One of the things that really struck me in this interview was how Glen and his team recognized opportunities and the fit for their expertise and know-how, and how they quickly took action to take advantage of those opportunities. Glen says that we all love innovation, but you can only have innovation if someone has the guts to go first. He explains to us how it came about that their idea ended up being trialled in a large way by NASA, how their product is being tested in large sporting stadiums across the world, and how the same technology is now being used for infection control in hospitals. This week's innovation tip is educate your customers and other stakeholders. With any innovation, or indeed any product or service you are providing, customers are interested in finding out about what the benefits for them are before they decide to buy that product or service. The more you can educate your customers about the benefits of the products and services you offer, the more likely you are to have the right kind of customers purchase your products or services. As Glen points out in the interview, the internet is a fabulous tool to help with that education process. Before we meet Glen, a quick competition announcement. This week's competition prize is sponsored by Innovabiz, where we help smart, innovative business owners who need real, tangible results from the internet transform their online presence into a business generation machine that works even when they're not working. The prize is a copy of our 7 website design secrets to help get you more sales. That's a workshop valued at $97. It's a video series together with a workbook and resources guide. So stay tuned later on in the interview where you'll find out how you can enter the draw to win that prize. So stay with us. Let's get into the innovation hive and get the buzz from Glen Finkel.
This is the InnovaBuzz podcast, helping smart businesses be even more innovative.
Hi, I'm Jürgen Strauss, and welcome to this episode of the InnovABuzz podcast. And I'm really privileged to have here with me, all the way from New York City in the USA, Glen Finkel from Pureti. So, Glen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jürgen. Happy to be here.
Now, Pureti have some very innovative products that have the potential to improve our lives in quite a number of ways, from reducing pollution to helping respiratory problems to even enhancing infection control. But before we hear from Glen about all those wonderful products, I'd just like to announce today's competition, and that's a copy of my 7 website design secrets to get you more sales workshop. That's a video series together with a workbook and a resources guide. So stay tuned later on in the interview where you'll find out how you can enter the draw to win that prize. So Glen, before we get on to Pureti and the technology that you yourself have said is too good to be true technology, and learn more about that, let's find out a little bit about you as a person. When you were a young child, what were your ambitions? What did you want to be when you grew up?
So I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and it evolved a little bit, but I do recall wanting to be an astronaut at some point. Space program was quite exciting back then.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly was, wasn't it? You know, going through the 60s, I remember sitting in school watching the moon landing live, and of course that was the very early days of television.
Yeah, spectacular.
Yeah.
So we need to get back there.
Yeah. So when did you kind of change direction from becoming an astronaut to going into science, into the more fundamental investigative sciences, shall we say?
Well, it took me a while. I got distracted by the latter half of the 60s. So my first career, actually, I was a clinical psychologist.
Okay.
Which is somewhat scientific. I worked in community mental health, which was a fascinating experience.
Yeah, I bet.
And somehow I made my way into material science, but that was only 15 years ago. And it was quite coincidental. Steve Jobs has made this statement, that famous Stanford commencement speech, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only do it looking back. And that certainly describes my path. I went from being a clinical psychologist to a commercial fisherman to working in the shoe industry for 15 years to being involved in material technology for the last 15 years.
Okay, so how did you end up in material technology, and how did Pureti then come about?
I ended up in material technology trying to solve a problem for a potential client. They walked into my showroom. I was a consultant at this point in time. They had a hat that was a baseball cap, and on the brim in the front it lit up and said, "Show me the money." This was when that Jerry Maguire movie was popular. And I said, "What is this?" And they explained that it was an electroluminescent lamp. And I said, "So how does it work?" And he says, "Well, there's a battery over here, and there's a little computer chip." And I said, "Stop! This is computerized?" And they said, "Yes, this was 25 years ago."
Yeah.
And I explained, all right, now I'm interested, because I wanted to, back then, be at the intersection of wearables and computers. Throughout, I was an early adopter of PC technology, and I used it in the shoe industry, and I was interested in this idea of miniaturization and integrating computers into wearables. So I helped these guys get started in their business. And then somebody approached me and said, "You seem to know a lot about marketing light-related technology." And I said, "Of course, it's my specialty." I had not really conceived of myself in that manner, but I was invited into a project that had to do with retroreflectivity. And it was a cost-effective alternative to 3M Scotchlite technology, which is a $7 billion monopoly around the world protecting people by making them visible at night. That led to a project where we made retroreflective paint for bumpers of cars. That led to a project where we focused on the active ingredient, which were clear glass beads inside the paint. We shrank them back to miniaturization. We shrank them to the size of 4 microns. That led to a sales trip to Hong Kong 15 years ago, 2001, where we introduced this glass bead technology and were introduced to the early stages of what we're working on today. And that changed my life.
Okay. Well, so tell us a little bit about Pureti and some of the ideas that you've taken to commercialization through that company.
Well, what I was introduced to in 2001 was a technology that was already over 40 years old. Technology discovered in Japan in 1968 at the University of Tokyo. One of those kind of, talking about innovation, one of those post-it note discoveries. They didn't really set out to discover this. They were trying to understand, at least from what I've been told, the story is they were trying to understand why paint fell apart in the sun.
Yeah.
And everybody knew it was an interaction between light, energy, and a mineral in the paint. The mineral specifically being titanium dioxide, which is the white pigment in paint, or the pacifier in paint. Actually, every gallon of paint, whether it's white or colored, has at least 1.5 pounds of TiO2 in it.
Yeah.
And people knew something was going on between light and this mineral. There was an old expression, paint chalks. You run your finger against the wall and it gets white. So they knew something was going on that caused the paint to fall apart. When these scientists drilled down, they came to understand that it was two chemical reactions that were triggered by the TiO2 that, if maximized, could be tremendous tools for infection control and environmental benefit. So that was the first eureka moment. That was their breakthrough.
Yeah.
Professors Honda and Fujishima. Today, there is over 10,000 patents in this field. There have been over 50 international conferences on the use of photocatalytic TiO2 to treat air and water pollution, and over 38,000 scientific articles. When I stumbled on it in 2001, it was not quite that developed, but fairly well established. There was a lot of commercial activity in Asia around infection control, specifically in Japan, and a lot of commercial activity in Europe around pollution reversal, and virtually nothing going on in America. And as an American businessman, that smelled like opportunity.
Yeah.
We had also been introduced to a water-based version of the chemistry that had some fundamental flaws. But we could tell that the water-based version had advantages over the earlier powder-based versions. The flaws were substantial. Anything you sprayed with the stuff back in 2001 turned yellow for 2 weeks. Bit of a problem in the coatings industry. Yeah. 2 weeks later, when the yellow wore out, you could tell that the product applied somewhat blotchily. So the fellows I was talking to own the bus company in Hong Kong. The buses turned yellow for 2 weeks. The yellow went away, and now the buses look like zebras. Not terribly attractive. Yeah. The third problem was the cost. It was outrageously expensive. So the original interest was an opportunity to help a customer or take advantage of a growing industry that had no traction in America, that had some potential if we could solve these problems. Fortunately, I had a partner who was a genius chemist, and our team went to work on it, and 3 years later, we had some breakthroughs and filed patents and spun this out into a separate company. That was the beginning of So Pureti is the name of our company. We're an American manufacturer of light-activated, water-based surface treatments. Our products get spray applied to the outside or inside of buildings or vehicles. And on the outside, the buildings or vehicles stay cleaner longer, reducing the need for washing, reducing the amount of water and chemicals used in washing, and reducing the time of washing. So for facility maintenance or vehicle maintenance, it saves a lot of money. The other wonderful aspect is that the same chemistry reverses pollution. So the buildings that we treat actually break down harmful indirect greenhouse gases like NOx and harmful VOCs and direct greenhouse gases like methane. On the inside of buildings, there's not as much light, but there is more than enough light to deliver what we call an indoor air quality benefit. So we are spraying the inside of hospital rooms and hotel rooms and rental cars and getting rid of odors. Yeah. And in the case of hospital rooms in Spain, improving infection control scores. We're most excited about the health aspects of our chemistry. The air purification contribution is remarkable. And we're getting more and more proof points of that every day, and more and more traction in a variety of fields every day.
Okay, yeah, now that sounds really fascinating, and like you say, the health benefits is certainly an exciting aspect. So what kind of testing do you actually do to kind of prove the concept? Because I know you must have done a lot, because I know that NASA, in fact, has taken an interest in this technology and has supported you with some project funding.
Yes, they've been terrific. One of the challenges with a technology like this, it sounds too good to be true. And so testing and independent validation and certification are critical to bringing innovation into reality. NASA contacted us. One of the researchers there was aware of photocatalysis. NASA had actually done research on the chemistry in the 80s, Photocatalytic TiO2 is used in the space station to purify air, the International Space Station. But they were using the earlier powder-based versions. Mm-hmm. They sampled all the requested samples from anybody that had a coating-type version. We supplied 2,000 glass slides to NASA. They tested them in their labs. A year later, they called back and said, "Congratulations, you're the top of the heap. We'd like to test you on our buildings." We went down and sprayed a couple of white buildings in Stennis, Mississippi. The issue for them at the time was mold growth on the outside of the buildings. This is post-Katrina, and throughout that entire region of America, mold growth was out of control. Yeah. And NASA had all these two-story white buildings from the 60s that they were having trouble maintaining. And so we did some real-world tests, and the results were terrific. Their validation led to our winning 6 awards around the world. Mm-hmm. That's also tremendously helpful in gaining credibility. But we've done all kinds of testing. The first testing we did was safety testing. When you have something new, especially if you believe it's a healthcare product, you want to make sure you do no harm. So our solution is basically a mineral water. It's 99% water, 1% mineral. And the first testing we did was the aquatic toxicity test. Take minnows, which are proxies for humans, and dump them in the water, and if they swim for a long time, you have a safe mineral water. And the fish seem to love our chemistry, so we passed that test. The second test we did was functionality testing. So how do you prove that something is self-cleaning? There were, at the time we were looking to do this testing early, it was 2004, there were no test methods in America. There was no ASTM method. Nobody had ever heard of this. We had to get, the only protocols in the world were in Japanese. We had them translated and turned them over to the National Sanitation Foundation. And a very simple test. You take 2 substrates, coat one and not the other, and then apply an organic dye. And under light, you see the organic dye disappear if you have a photocatalytic coating. And we did this testing with the National Sanitation Foundation. They were astounded. The dye, or proxy for dirt, disappeared in front of their eyes. They went and tested our treated substrates with germs. They applied E. coli and staph, which represent the world of germs, gram-negative and gram-positive bacteria. And they were astounded, we were astounded, that it killed 99.99% of the germs within an hour. Wow. And it was a spectacular result. And since then, we've done a zillion other tests. We've had a wonderful breakthrough in testing support in the last 6 months. There is, for the first time in history, an independent laboratory that does nothing but test photocatalytic products and materials. And they're in Belfast, Northern Ireland.
Okay.
And we've been sending them all kinds of tests and materials, and it's been terrifically gratifying that they're as excited about us as we are about them. We are outperforming our competition, as we've claimed, and now that they have proven. So that's been enormously helpful.
Yeah. And of course, you've done a lot of in-field testing to prove that the products work in real life as well. And one of the fascinating ones, I know, you mentioned NASA, and all of us that grew up through the moon landing stage get excited by NASA, and that gives you a lot of credibility. But the other one, as a football fan, that I found fascinating was you've done some work in the Nou Camp Stadium in Barcelona, which is kind of the home of FC Barcelona, one of the biggest football clubs in the world.
Yeah, it's tremendously exciting that we have this ability to keep football stadiums and any public venue cleaner longer, and save time and energy and water and chemical use involved in power washing. We basically, one of our slogans is "Stop power washing and start sun washing." Our first trial in the arena or stadium space was down in Miami, Florida, where the Miami Dolphins and University of Miami Hurricanes play football. It's a 25-year-old stadium. And in Miami, between the heat, the humidity, and the beer, the mold growth was out of control.
Yeah.
And they would literally have to power wash after every football game. We did a trial for 18 weeks, took 6 rows, cleaned them, treated the interior 2 rows, and they could see by week 6 that it was a miracle. That the purity treated rows were staying clean and the other rows were getting moldy and moldy and moldy. By week 7, they gave up and power washed the control. They couldn't put up with it anymore.
Yeah.
Test went on for 16 weeks, and we've now actually done that in that stadium, 2/3 of it. So we've done a full football stadium, and now that's a reference point that's opened the door for us with New Camp or Camp New, I forget which. But we're also talking to a couple of football stadiums here in America, and we have some people talking about Brazil for the next Olympics, and it's exciting. That's an exciting market to be in.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So how do you describe what you do then in one sentence? If you meet somebody that doesn't know you and they say, "What do you do, Glenn?" What's your elevator pitch, so to speak?
It's really difficult, and I don't know that I ever give the same one twice.
Yeah.
I explained that I'm in the advanced clean technology field, and that we manufacture a water-based surface treatment that uses light to reverse pollution, clean the air, and keep buildings clean at the same time, and help people save on maintenance.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah.
It's pretty tight, and for most of our company's life, this has all been a professionally applied product. One of our recent innovations, and this occurred at the request of a customer, is that we now have a do-it-yourself version of this chemistry.
Okay.
We manufacture, so sometimes I'll simply say I'm a manufacturer of a glass cleaner that also cleans the air.
Yeah.
And they'll say, what do you mean? And I said, well, you clean your windows with this stuff like you would use any glass cleaner. And we leave this magic mineral behind that uses light to eliminate odors and clean the air in your interior space. And so we are now using this chemistry inside cars. We just did a 1,200 car test with a major rental car company here in America. And the results were astounding. We're going to save them tens of millions of dollars through reduced cleaning. Instead of having to clean every time the car comes back, they can clean once a quarter, and they have better results. The windows are cleaner. Their customer satisfaction scores are higher because in addition to cleaning the windows, we're cleaning the air in the car, and they get improved odor control, let's say. We've just launched with partners, distribution partners in China. And this product in China, cleaning windows in China, we are reducing formaldehyde in interior rooms in China. So it's a health benefit. I mean, an extraordinary health benefit.
Yeah.
They have an issue in many rooms in China with unacceptably high levels of formaldehyde from various building manufacturing practices. Simply by cleaning your window, we can solve and address that problem.
That's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
It really is. I feel blessed to have stumbled on this chemistry and taken to it, and that it just seems to get better every single day.
Yeah. I imagine
we discover good uses for it.
I imagine there must also be a big market on solar panels as well, where if you can keep those cleaner and reduce cleaning costs there at the same time, keep the energy output at a maximum, because it would.
Yes, the technical term is derating due to soiling.
Yeah, okay.
And help with that. It's actually more pronounced on solar mirrors.
Okay.
Solar mirrors suffer more from getting dirty. They get cleaned more often. It's a bigger issue cleaning them because they're typically out in dirty desert type places. And so we think we have a big market there. We're also involved in some advanced work in the area of printable thin film solar. We're working with a remarkable young company that is going to be building solar printing plant factories in a box. So you get this box, and it's got the printer in it, and it's got the consumables to make thin film solar that you can put anywhere on the side of your building, on your shed, on the ground, and out comes electricity.
Wow,
and
that's
an
exciting.
aspect of our chemistry is going inside of that system. We're the carrier ink for a portion of their system. So we're very excited about solar as well.
Yeah, okay. So what do you actually spend most of your time doing day to day, Glenn?
Trying to keep up with it all and working with my wonderful partners and colleagues. We've got a great team. I'm more Mr. Outside. I have a wonderful partner, Brian Haas, who is more on the inside and keeps the wheels running. So I do a lot of educating and introducing people to purity. And when you have something that's this different, this new, this unbelievable, you have to convince a lot of people to get pull through demand. And so a lot of time is spent on that, and a lot of time is spent on trying to identify and focus where we can get most return for effort. There's an expression, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah, you spoke
looking for a problem.
Got a bit of a breakup happening there. Hopefully that'll keep. Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully it'll keep going.
So yeah, you've heard the expression. When you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So one of our issues is we think we have Thor's hammer in our hands. It's a dizzying array of opportunities that purity represents. There's literally no surface light reaches that we can't enhance and protect and transform into a self-cleaning air purifier. So when everything is an opportunity, you can get nowhere. You have to define where you want to start, where you want to prioritize, and we spend a lot of time on that. To make sense.
Yeah. So what kind of
breaking up again?
No, we're good now actually. So hopefully we'll be fine. So what kind of things keep you awake at night? You talked about prioritization and sort of being overwhelmed a little bit almost by all the opportunities that are out there.
Well, what keeps me awake at night? Just excitement. I mean, excited about what's going to come next today. It seems like we're opening new markets almost on a monthly basis. We had some recent publicity in some major magazines that's brought attention from all over the world. So by the end of the year, we'll be in 10 new countries. We were an American manufacturer solely focused on America until 2 years ago. So we've had this terrific global expansion. If the question is, what do I worry about? Not a whole lot. I tend not to be a worrier. I'm excited about the future of our technology. Right now, our chemistry responds to UVA light, which is 4% of the sun's energy. So we differentiate from all our competition because we need less light to work than anybody else, but we still need light to work. And outdoors, we deliver full self-cleaning benefit. Indoors, there's not enough light for that. So indoors, it's focused on odor control and indoor air quality, which is substantial. But people are working on visible light photocatalysis, TiO2 that'll respond to the full energy of sunlight. And this is one of the holy grails of science today. There's well over 100 labs chasing this. It's kind of like the cold fusion story. If somebody announces they have it every other month, and they've had egg on their face for 10 years. I've had this as a Google alert for 10 years.
Okay.
But somebody, somewhere, will come up with this. And so one of the things we spend a lot of time on is tracking this and making sure we'll be there when somebody comes up with it, because we still think we have the ideal carrier chemistry or whatever nanocrystal could deliver this incredible benefit.
Yeah.
And by the way, if some scientist somewhere does have this, they should email me at the end of the show. We'd love to talk.
Okay. And yeah, we'll get those details later on. Yeah. Have you ever thought my early career was in the photographic industry, and of course silver halide was the chemistry there that is light sensitive to visible light. So have you ever thought of incorporating silver halide, coating the crystals with silver halide or something along those lines? I guess we're getting into a brainstorming phase here. We don't actually want to do that, but I'll leave that thought with you.
Well, there are a few people that combine silver with photocatalytic TiO2 to try to deliver an antimicrobial benefit and air purifying, self-cleaning benefit.
Yeah, it's
an approach.
Okay, so what are the biggest challenges then that you face in building a business like this?
Well, the credibility issue was a big one early on. It just sounds too good to be true. And I certainly experienced it when I first heard about it, so we can empathize with that reaction. We seem to be past that, getting past that every day. There was a lot of concern about nanotechnology out there. So we don't emphasize that we're a nanotechnology. There's a knee-jerk reaction in many places. Nano is a no-no.
Yeah.
We've done extensive testing. We are safe. We've been tested in solution. We've been tested in spray form. We've been tested on the surface. We comply fully. But we do have to explain and overcome these legitimate concerns. But it takes time to educate people that there are safe nanotechnologies. They're not all to be afraid of.
Yeah, there's a really important point there in terms of educating people, educating your clients, educating potential partners and end users of your product. And I think that's kind of something that every business needs to do well, isn't it?
Very, very much so. And especially when you're involved in disruptive innovation that's literally creating a whole new industry. To just take buildings, for example. We need to have the building owner understand what this is about. We need to have the property manager understand how this works. We need to deal with all the concerns of the facility maintenance company and the actual workers themselves and the people that live or work in the building.
Yeah.
So there's a whole conga line, folks, that need to be communicated to. And fortunately, it's a good news story. It's a very hopeful story that buildings can now be health enhancing facilities for the humans inside them and also for the planet on the outside.
Yeah.
We really are involved in an extraordinary story that light can transfer.
Bit of a break-up again. Well, unfortunately, the technology there let us down. Now, the video camera at Glen's end lost connection with the internet or lost connection with me. And unfortunately, I didn't realize that when we reconnected that the recorder was no longer on. So we went on to continue our interview for about 30 minutes more. Unfortunately, I don't have a recording of that. Now, I did frantically at the end of the interview when I realized this, scribble down all of Glen's answers, and I thought the best thing I could do was to continue to present that to you in both video and audio format, and I guess you'll have to put up with my voice answering the questions as I recall Glen responding. So the next one I actually asked once we recovered that audio was, Glen, when did you discover the web? And Glen said that he had a few other businesses before that that he'd launched with a lot of fanfare, and they ended up a little bit with egg on their face because it was probably launched a little bit prematurely before they were really ready to go prime time. So with Pureti, they took those lessons on board and decided that they first needed to get it right before they launched the website publicly and launched the company publicly. And so it was quite late, and I think from recollection it was 2009 or so that they launched the website for Pureti. And an interesting story he relayed was that the first web developer actually refused to work on develop the website until they got their branding right. And back then they had come up with the name Tioxica, which is like a wordplay on titanium dioxide, but which, of course, as the web developer pointed out, does sound a little bit like toxic. So that wasn't going to work, they said. So they came up with Pureti, which they still use today, and the web developer did the entire branding based around that, as well as developed the site around that. I went on to ask Glen about examples of how he'd used the internet in innovative ways, and Glen pointed out that the internet is an amazing tool, as we all know, and that they probably use it most for education purposes, which, as he had already said in the interview to date, is very important to them. So anytime somebody is launching a disruptive new technology, you need to do a lot of education for all the stakeholders, and the internet has allowed Pureti to do that in a very quick and efficient manner, and also with a very broad reach. I asked Glen, with all that innovation going on and all that work at Pureti, how he stayed balanced, what he did in the time that he wasn't working. Now, Glen pointed out that he is married, he has 3 children, so his wife and children definitely keep him grounded. And he also has a dog, and that was interesting. We had the dog interrupt our first attempt at the audio, the Skype interview, which we had to abandon because of internet connectivity. But I did get to meet the dog, so he also keeps Glen grounded. Glen lives in New York City, so there's a lot of opportunities there, he pointed out. So he loves to go walking every morning. He takes his dog walking every morning. And of course, in New York City, you have the theatre, you have shows, you have the cinema, as well as a lot of great restaurants. And Glen certainly appreciates all those and spends time enjoying those with his family. I asked Glen about any interesting books he'd read recently that he wanted to recommend to our listeners. And Glen said that he reads a lot. And he talked about a book he's currently reading called 9 Lives by William Dalrymple, and it's subtitled In Search of the Sacred Modern India. Now, Glen said that it describes a widely differing ranges of cultures, so basically those 9 lives that make up India, and it does that within a series of 9 biographies of people who are living those cultures. And he said it highlighted to him that we're all different, and yet in many ways we're all so alike. So that sounds like a fascinating book, and that's 9 Lives by William Dalrymple. So if anyone's interested, search for it on Google, and I'm sure that you can download it from your favourite bookstore. I also asked Glen that if he was able to wave a magic wand and fix one thing in his business right now, what that would be. And it was interesting, Glen's response. He said Pureti has been an amazing journey for him so far, and he said he felt so blessed to be on that ride. He said if there was anything that he wanted to fix with a kind of a swoop of a magic wand, it would be just to make things happen much faster. So clearly, things are all progressing well on track, but he would like to see them happening much faster. From there we went on to the Buzz, which is our innovation round designed to help our audience, who are primarily innovators and leaders in their field, with some tips from the experience and knowledge of our guests. And Glen was very sharing here and had some interesting insights. So the first one that I ask is, what's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative? And Glen said the key thing was to listen to your customers and focus on their problems. So don't get bogged down in internal machinations. It's the customer needs and problems which are the fundamentals, and keep focused on the fundamentals. I asked him also what's the best thing he's done to develop new ideas and products, and he used the term zoom in and zoom out. So I pushed a little bit on that, and he explained that that was the ability to look at the big picture but also look at the fine details depending on the situation and what's necessary. Don't get stuck in one view, don't get bogged down in the details, but at the same time don't stay at the big picture level. Do drill into the details when necessary and appropriate. I asked him what his favorite tool or system for productivity and innovation were, and he said he really doesn't have a tool, although he pointed out that Google, of course, is great and that they use that all the time for research and for finding things out. What would we do without Google? He said it's important, though, that in the company that there is a culture of innovation right throughout the team and with the people, and he said that definitely is the case in Pureti and that they have a great team in place. I asked what the best way is to keep a project or a client on track, and Glen said be very clear, very transparent, and fiercely committed to the milestones and timelines. So that he was very strong on that. And then he added, of course, communication. The fifth point of the InnovaBuzz or the Buzz round is what's the best way to keep a project? Sorry, I've done that one. What's the number one thing you can do to differentiate yourself? And Glen was very simple with that one, simple but profound, and that was be yourself. Now, it's interesting, I've heard that before on a recent podcast I was listening to, someone doing, and they said the same thing, be yourself, because nobody else can be you. I then went on to ask Glen what he saw as the future for him and for Pureti. And he pointed out that more and more Pureti were seeing themselves as a healthcare company, doing things like infection control in hospitals. He said that was one big need and opportunity that they're focusing on for the future. He pointed out that in the USA there are about 100,000 people each year that enter hospital for a minor procedure and suffer hospital-associated infections that lead to their death. 100,000 people each year. I was staggered by that statistic, so that is really startling. And Glen said, we have the product that can dramatically reduce that incidence of that kind of thing happening, and it will be so simple to apply, and it's cost effective, and it works right now. So they're very much focused on doing advanced trials in that particular area, and that's a big opportunity that he saw for the future. I asked the bigger picture question, which is what the future is for the advanced materials industry, and Glen said he thought that the advanced materials industry is the one of the next decade. So in the past decade, or of the next decades. So in the past, we've had IT as being the glamour industry, but now moving forward, Glen sees the advanced materials industry as being the one that delivers kind of big advances in technology and in our lifestyle. He talked about having smart buildings whose surfaces not only self-clean, but also sanitize water to the point of providing drinking water from whatever water is surrounding us, that produce energy that will sustain the energy needs of that building and the inhabitants of that building. He pointed out that there's so much happening with all kinds of advanced materials and innovation around that space, that it's really exciting times we live in relation to those things. I asked him what kind of things he expected from the Internet of Things. And his response was, of course, the Internet of Things also provides some fantastic possibilities, but the key will be that we use it for good and not evil. So he said, imagine a hacker getting into somebody's pacemaker remotely and shutting it down, which is a scary thought. So he said, we need to be really careful and closely monitor future developments. So clearly, the enabler also enables some devious things to be occurring, and keeping track of that and making sure it's used for good is something that I guess we're all really keen on. So at this point, it's time to remind people about the competition. So again, today I'm giving away a copy of my 7 website design secrets to get you more sales. That's a video workshop, or a series of videos actually, together with a workbook and a resources guide. And what we'd like you to do to go into the draw, to enter the draw to win that prize, is leave a comment under this video and tell us some of the innovative ways that you can think of to use Pureti's products on different, and I said at the time, not ordinary surfaces. So how you might achieve a unique outcome by using Pureti's products in an unusual way. Leave your comments under the video and I'll get Glen to come by in a couple of weeks and award the prize. And Glen kind of laughed and said, yes, that's interesting that I describe, that you, he said to me, describe our uses as already as ordinary. And I said, well, we really want to get our customers to contribute new ideas to your pool of ideas. So that's the competition announcement. Now, in conclusion of the interview part, I asked Glen what the number one piece of advice he would give any business who wants to be a leader in innovation and productivity. And he responded with that he was reminded of the saying of Winston Churchill that success consists in going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. So keeping that enthusiasm through any failures that you might encounter is really key. And he also added, of course, that it's really important to meet lots of other innovators, which he has the opportunity to do so and to share stories and bounce ideas off one another, where he felt that's a great source of new ideas or even enhance existing ideas. So talk to other innovators, talk to other people that are inside your industry and even outside your industry. So in terms of reaching out to Glen to say thank you for sharing his knowledge, he suggested that email is the best way, and his email is glen@pureti, PURETI.com, and I'll post a link underneath the video, and of course the website, which is www.pureti.com. And my final question to him was who he would like to see me interview on future episodes of the InnovaBuzz podcast and why. And Glen nominated Jacques Touillon, I hope I'm pronouncing that reasonably, who's the CEO of Alima. And they've developed some devices for constantly monitoring indoor air quality remotely through a smartphone and having alerts sent to your smartphone by SMS or by email when the air quality levels goes outside a particular range. So that sounds a really exciting development, and of course it's a good kind of complementary technology to the products that Pureti are doing. So Jacques, keep an eye out on your inbox, and I'll be sending you an invite to the InnovaBuzz podcast shortly. And I concluded with thanking Glen for spending time with us on the InnovaBuzz podcast. It's unfortunate we didn't capture the second half of the interview with Glen live. However, I hope I've given you a good a good and a true account of the discussion I had with Glen. So I did thank him. It was very kind of him to share that time with us and to share his experience and the story of Pureti with us. I wished him all the best at Pureti. I'm really excited to see what they've done so far and to keep in touch and see what is going to happen with Pureti and the technologies that they have in the future. So now Glen also thanked me for the opportunity and said that this was a great initiative of mine, and I'm really annoyed that I didn't capture that on tape. So that's the end of the interview part, even though the second 20 minutes or so was me reporting back on my discussion with Glen. Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed meeting Glen Finkel as much as I enjoyed interviewing him, and despite the unfortunate mishap with the technology, that you got a lot out of that interview. There were some real gems in there, and the story of Pureti is just fascinating, really fascinating. Now, you can subscribe to this podcast, of course, via iTunes and Stitcher, so that you'll never miss a future episode. And this particular episode, all the show notes are going to be at innovabiz.com.au/Glen Finkel. So that's GlenFinkel. So no all lowercase, all one word, no hyphens, dashes or underscores. Now, everything we spoke about on the interview, the links to Glen's email, to Pureti's website, to the book he recommended, and one or two other things will be there for you to follow. Now, remember to leave your comments underneath the video to get into the draw for the prize, which is a copy of my 7 website design secrets to get you more sales, which is a workshop of a series of videos, a workbook and a resources guide. Now tell us some of the innovative ideas that you can think of to use Pureti's products on different surfaces and how that might achieve some unique outcomes. And I'll get Glen to swing by in a couple of weeks and award that prize. And if you like the InnovaBuzz podcast, we'd really love you to give us a 5-star review over at iTunes, because that's going to help us get even more listeners. So until the next time, remember, if you don't innovate, you stagnate. So think big, be adventurous, and innovate on.